just to begin, what are the origins of feminism, and how did it all start?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. First of all, Jazakallah khairan for inviting me. Very happy to be here and speaking to you. Alhamdulillah, I've had the opportunity to study the theoretical basis of feminism. Like, where did this idea of feminism come from? Who really originated it? And what was it really used for? So this is something that if Muslims understand the origins of feminism, they'll recognize that this is something that is very dangerous, or has the potential to be very dangerous, because feminism originated with the colonization of the Muslim world. Feminism was actually a tool. And so the first feminists, you will read a certain story in textbooks. If you just Google feminism, or you read encyclopedia entries, you read the history of feminism, there is a kind of official story that they give you on what feminism is. And they start with what's called first wave feminism. But there is a real story that is not taught because it looks ugly, and it damages the reputation of feminism. And this is that feminism began with the colonizer. And in fact, it was white Europeans who came with this argument that non-Europeans are oppressing women. And this is why we have to go as the colonizer to liberate these women. We have to save them from these bad, colored, Muslim, Chinese. We have to go save these women.
Yeah.
So these were the first feminists, and Muslims were a big target. And they developed a lot of writing, these colonizers, on how Muslims oppress women. This was their entire narrative. And this narrative gave them the moral justification to go and conquer and to colonize and genocide, oppress Muslims. Yeah. But not only Muslims, also Native Americans in the Americas, Aboriginals, okay, Chinese, Africans throughout the world, right? Muslims were one of the biggest targets, but there were others as well. And they brought what kinds of arguments? They said, for example, that, well, Muslims practice polygamy. A Muslim man can have more than one wife. This is extremely oppressive. This is extremely evil. Yeah. We have to go save these women. But guess what? It wasn't only Muslims who were practicing polygamy. It was also multiple wives. It was also Native Americans. They also have this practice. This argument was used against them. Also, Aboriginals practice polygamy. So this argument was used against them. So it's a pattern and similar argumentation. And the ideal woman and the ideal relationship between man and woman is the European white woman, European white relationship. So it was a racial white supremacist ideology. That's the ideology behind colonialism. Yeah. And it was also very anti-Muslim. So this is the origin of feminism. Then, these ideas started to spread within the West itself. Yeah. And then that's where the standard story comes from. When we hear about the first wave feminists, yeah, they came a century after the colonizer feminists. But the official story in the textbooks begins with that first wave, but we know that actually it was way before. Yeah. The feminism was originated as a kind of weapon to attack. So this is the origin of feminism.
Amazing. And with that, does anti-feminism equal anti-women's rights? Like, are they the same thing, or?
No, because the question is, what is women's rights? Who decides what are women's rights? Yeah. Who tells us that this is the correct way to treat women versus this is the correct way to treat men.
Yeah.
This is the correct way. So we have to go back to who defines these things, and it's very clear. The creator of human beings decides what our rights are.
Yeah.
Why? Because when we say what is a right, like women's rights or a human right, what does that mean? And we can ask the law professors, we can ask the secular historians, legal theorists, and they'll say that what a human right is, or what women's rights are, it means whatever is in the interests, what benefits the human being or the woman or the man, whatever is in their interest. But who decides what is in the interests of human beings? It has to be the creator of human beings. Only the creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who knows what we need and what is beneficial for us as makhluk, as creation, as the created. So this is very basic to understand, but what feminism tells us, okay, based on these man-made theories, that no, women have to have the ability to just be naked whenever they want. Women should have the ability to just undress and show their beauty. This is women's rights. Women's rights mean that women should have the ability to, anything that you find in feminism is the claim that these are women's rights, but in reality they're man-made and they're based on false understandings of what is good for a woman, what is good for her best interest. But we know, like Islamically, on the basic concept of hijab, for example, is it truly good for a woman to expose herself and to show herself in public, in front of non-mahram, in front of other strange men? Is this really going to benefit her psychologically? Is it going to benefit her spiritually? Is it going to benefit her in the akhirah? Is it going to benefit her in terms of her family relations? They say yes, but where's the evidence for that? And how do they know? So these are kinds of arguments that we bring, that what feminism says is women's rights. They claim it. They claim it, but what is it based on? It's not based on anything. When Islam also brings rights to everyone. Everyone has rights. Even the animals have rights. Even children have rights. Even the trees have rights. Everything that Allah has created has rights on us. We have a duty towards it. So we have to go back to the Quran, we have to go back to the Sunnah to understand what the true rights of women and men are. But feminism, for example, will say that no, men don't have a right to have more than one wife, for example. Men do not have the right to be the head of a household. Right? Men do not have the right because that violates women's rights. But Islam says no, men are الرجال قوامون على النساء, that men are the authorities and protectors over women. This is what Allah says in Surah An-Nisa. So this is violating, quote unquote, supposedly violating women's rights. But this is what Allah has said, that this is the best way to live life, to organize a family. And we can talk about this in more depth, but one of the big questions that people have is that, is Islam against equality between men and women? Is Islam against equality between men and women? And the answer is no. Okay, so how is this? When you have a verse in the Quran, in Surah An-Nisa, that says, الرجال قوامون على النساء, this is not equal. This is not equal because it's saying that men, rijal, have authority over women. So where's the equality? There's no equality in this. But you have to think more carefully, because what does equality mean? Right? Because think about it in terms of any system of government. You have the president of the country, you have the senators, the politicians, the representatives. They are also, they have authority over the people. Is that correct? Does that mean that they are not, that there's no equality between them?
No.
That's not the way that they conceive of it. So in Islam, the equality between men and women is very simple and clear. That Allah says very clearly in the Quran that whatever you do, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Allah will sees what you do, and He is seeing who has the most taqwa, who is the most pious, who is doing amal salih, who's doing good deeds. These are the things that men and women in Islam are equal. There's no bonus points for being a man. If you pray and a sister prays, if you do hajj and a sister does hajj, then there's no bonus points with Allah. It's equal between men and women. So this is very clear equality. It's a spiritual equality between the sexes in Islam. But does that mean that men and women have exactly the same roles? Do men and women have exactly the same responsibilities? In Islam, no. There's differences. These are important differences. Why? Because men and women are not created the same. Allah has made men in a certain way, for a certain role, for a certain job, and He's made women for a certain role and for a certain job. And it's very clear, even if you have eyes, you can see that men and women are not the same. And their thinking is not the same, their personalities are not the same. There are big differences between the two sexes, and this is from the wisdom of Allah. Allah made two kinds. He made everything in pairs. He made everything in two kinds. This is beautiful wisdom of the Creator, Al-Khaliq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making this for our benefit. But the feminist comes and says, no, everyone has to be the same. Everyone has to do everything the same, have the same capacity. This is going to lead people astray. It's going to make them hate Islam. It's going to make them hate themselves. It's going to make them hate the opposite sex. This is the kind of problems that we find in Western society, and any society that has accepted this feminist cancer.
I'd like to also ask another question that's kind of that's a big one out there. Is feminism compatible with Islam? And so is there is there ways the way they overlay? A lot of people say yes, there's moments where they overlay and they have, I think that, but I guess I'll let you inshallah clarify. Is feminism and Islam compatible?
So there are areas of overlap, but it's very thin layer. So I mentioned equality in terms of spiritual equality. Nothing that a man does, if a woman does the same action, everything else being equal, then they'll be rewarded equally by Allah. This is a basic fact. So if we consider this equality, then that might be overlap with feminism. Also, Islam has much to say about taking care of women and being gentle with women, being kind to women, taking care of women. And this kind of chivalry is a part of Islam, rujula or maru'a. This is kind of like chivalry or manliness, that part of being a man and a strong believer is that you take care of your women folk. You take care of your daughters. You take care of your mother. You take care of your sisters. And you have to have ghayra for them. Ghayra meaning you have a kind of protective jealousy. You don't want to see them harmed. You don't want to see them, anyone taking advantage of them. So this is all part of Islam. It's very important. And I would say that this shows clearly how Islam has much more to say and cares much more about the well-being of women and women's rights as opposed to feminism. In fact, feminism is destroying ghayra, okay? Because, you know, there's a funny, there used to be a funny thing that was shared online a long time ago, a few years ago, where a Muslim daughter sent her husband or her father a text message saying that, Baba, I think I'm going to take off my hijab. I'm going to just take off my hijab, remove my hijab. I don't feel comfortable with it. And then the father, who's supposed to be a Muslim father,
Yeah.
says that, oh, well, you know, whatever you decide, sweetie, whatever you decide, sweetheart, you know, it's your decision. I have no place to tell you how to dress, or I have no place to tell you how to behave.
Yeah.
So this went viral. This went viral because it was supposed to show, oh, how enlightened, mashallah, how open-minded and feminist this father is.
Yeah.
Because it plays against the stereotype of the, you know, the evil, controlling Muslim man.
Yeah.
So this went viral, but just it shows like how backwards it is. The father, if it was real, I don't know if it's even real, but it was presented. Maybe the girl just made it up, but it went viral, and it shows the kind of degeneracy. Like the father, you don't care that your daughter is exposing herself, that she is being seen by others, she can be taken advantage of others, she can be harassed by others because she's just showing her beauty publicly and violating the hijab. What about her relationship with Allah, that Allah has commanded her to do?
Absolutely.
To dress in a certain way, to act in a certain way, and she's violating this. Aren't you as a father concerned about her soul, about her akhirah, about her dunya, every aspect?
Yeah.
This is not, you're not taking care of her rights. You're not taking care of her as a daughter. So this shows you the kind of backwardsness that we find in the world today because of these feminist ideas.
Yeah. So what is your suggestion on ways in which individuals can probably combat this? Let's just say, like the example you've given, the father and his daughter. Let's just say you had a daughter who maybe had some of these views or ideas about feminism, and maybe it was because of things she heard from online, or maybe when she went to school, university, things that were kind of laid on to her. What advice would you have for a dad that's probably, let's just say, going through something like that, or not even just the father, just in general, as organizations, as even a youth organization like ourselves, who have youth everywhere who are going through stuff like this? What advice would you have on combating such a ideology?
Well, you have to educate yourself. You have to educate yourself, and there's a interesting movement, like a counter-feminist movement, because and even non-Muslims have recognized that feminism is a cancer, and it's destroying their families, it's destroying their society. So even they have recognized all the harms of feminism. So it's we can take advantage of material and the arguments that they make to educate ourselves about these things, and then that's really the first step. So you know, barakallahu fikum, you're having these kinds of conversations, you're trying to get a better understanding. This is very key, because once you recognize the harms of feminism and how many of the things that we've been taught, because I used to be a feminist myself.
Yeah.
When I used to have these same ideas about what is women's rights, and women should be able to do what they want in terms of exposing themselves, having sexual relationships with the opposite sex. Women should, there should be equality between father and mother in terms of their authority in the family. And, you know, these kinds of issues, I believe them, but only later I realized through education how wrong they were. So I think education can really open your eyes. And so there's this kind of movement, it's called Red Pill. The Red Pill movement. So it refers to the movie The Matrix. If you know about this movie, about The Matrix, they have, at one point, the main character is offered a blue pill or a red pill.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea is that if you take the blue pill, you go back to sleep, right? You go back to sleep. But if you take the red pill, then you'll wake up. You'll wake up and you'll see the reality of what the world is. And when you wake up, it'll shock you, because the world, the real world, is very different. The complete opposite of the fake world, the dream world that you're in, because you're in society, you're fed through media and through movies and through all of this garbage. You're fed a certain picture of reality. You take the red pill and then you wake up and you see, no, that's all fake. The real world is very different. So there was even a documentary. It's called The Red Pill. It's a documentary. And it became very popular and controversial because that documentary is about a woman who was a feminist. She was a feminist, and then she goes and talks to these kinds of different activists and these different professors and scientists, and she realizes how wrong feminism is and how corrupt it is. So this is a very interesting documentary. You can find it online. It's called The Red Pill. So this is the kind of education that we need. And another example is, I think important, is if we understand there are many, this kind of narrative that men are evil, men are just trying to control women, men only want to abuse women for their own benefit, men only want to take away the rights and the freedom of women. This feminist narrative, some Muslims, even those who say, I'm not a feminist, I'm not a feminist, so even they, some of them have these ideas. So they, this is the poison of feminism that affects so many. But we have to get out of this. And as Muslims, we don't have su'a dhann. We don't have bad assumptions about a whole sex, that men are all evil, or men have a tendency to be controlling in terms of in an evil, corrupt way, that they want to oppress, they want to subjugate. We don't have this kind of su'a dhann about a whole sex, half of humanity. No, and all of the Anbiya, all of the prophets were men. The final prophet, the final messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was a man, right? The Khulafa were all men. So this is these. How can they be evil? How can they be desiring to subjugate and oppress? How can they be zalim? But this is the impression. Most of the major scholars of Islam were men. So if you adopt this feminist attitude, that you are suspicious of men and you have su'a dhann, you have bad ideas about men, then you're going to dislike, or you're going to start to hate the ulama, the scholars. You're going to start to hate the Khulafa al-Rashidun, and then eventually it will lead to hate of even the Anbiya, even a hatred for the Anbiya. This is what we see among some feminists. They used to be Muslim. They used to be Muslim, but then they started to hate the Anbiya because of these feminist ideas, and this is why they left Islam. And you have one feminist who, she was led down this road of thinking that why is it that men can lead the salah, that the men can be imam, but not women? I'm going to be a woman imam. And she started leading salah. She started leading salah, and this is in the US. And, you know, she was doing this. It became very controversial. Of course, the kuffar, obviously the news media, that wanted to make it a big deal and show that, oh, see, women in Islam, they're taking over and changing the religion, because they view this as a good thing. This is quote unquote progress. And but then that same woman, she eventually came out and said things like, you know, we have to say no to the Quran. The Quran has some ideas that are contrary to women's rights and equality, so we have to say no to the Quran. So such a statement of kufr that she made. In another instance, she said that Ibrahim alayhi salam, Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, is a quote-unquote deadbeat dad. He's a deadbeat. This is what she said.
Wow.
So this hate of Anbiya, this is coming with feminism. It leads women down this road.
Yeah, it's not initially, it's not really like that. Many people, like you said, don't even realize they have feminist views or things until they actually realize how far they've gone down. And obviously, may Allah protect all of us,
I
not just
mean,
the females, because they just feel like only females are feminist, but there's actual men who are feminists as well. So it's not really a gender specific problem that we're talking about here. So inshallah, I hope both men and women are both understanding of this. As you can see, there are some comments, questions, as I have opened the floor for questions. Inshallah, I've written down some as you were speaking, so I just wanted to just mention those and then inshallah pick a couple from here, inshallah. One of them being, why is feminism, like, why is it so appealing to our sisters in Islam? Like, what makes it, I think, to always want to uphold these ideas and ideologies?
I think it's appealing because that's the status quo. Anything that's the status quo is going to be appealing, and it's going to have an influence. So that's really the main reason. And you made a very good point, Barakallahu Feek, that when you said that it's not just women who are falling into the feminist mindset, it's also men, and it's very dangerous. I would say it's a bigger problem when men have this feminist understanding. And Muslim men who are feminists cause the most damage. They cause the most damage because they allow these kinds of ideas to spread. So that's a very good point. But the main reason that it's popular is because it's the status quo. Like, this is what's being taught every single day to our brothers and sisters. So unfortunately, that causes a big harm.
Absolutely, absolutely, it does. And like you said, you won't know it's harmful unless you actually study it, like yourself. How you once were a feminist, but obviously when you actually started to learn and understand what the real values were, and that entail the actual word feminist, then you started to realize. And I think that's what we all should do. We shouldn't just accept status quo or just go with whatever the hype is, and actually ask yourself questions. And alhamdulillah, we are Muslims. I think it's much harder for a non-Muslim to understand or go about solving issues like that. So alhamdulillah, we do have a deen, and we're always referring back to that. We'll always brought us back to Sirat al-Mustaqim. Another question is, what's your views on rhetoric that only women can talk about feminism or women issues in general? Like only women can talk about women stuff, and men usually shouldn't have a say in what regards women issues, inshallah.
Well, feminism is not only about women. Feminism is also about men. Feminism is constantly talking about how evil men are. Feminism is always talking about how oppressive men are and how men need to change and men need to do this and that and the other. So the entire premise is false. Feminism is talking about men. So why can't men speak, right? Exactly. And if you have any kind of court of justice, right? Any court of justice, if it's a Muslim court or a secular court, when you have the accused, the party that is accused, he has the right to defend himself, and he has the right to have a say in the accusations against him in the court of law. This is justice, right? So feminism is accusing all men of being these evil monsters, oppressors. So we are in the court being accused of this. We have the right to defend ourselves and to speak and set the record straight. Who would deny this?
Absolutely. And it's only unjust to actually not let someone speak, especially if that actual topic speaks about them indirectly, inshallah. Is a lot of the time we get mixed up with the whole idea of misogyny and feminism. A question is feminism a result of misogyny? Does it fall under that? Does it become feminism? Or
some people individually, they might feel this.
Yeah.
You know, they might feel like, so there's, I'm not denying, and we shouldn't deny, that there are people who are abusive. There are men who are abusive. There are men who are oppressive. They violate the rights of women, but they violate the rights of women according to what Allah has defined as their rights. That's the difference. Okay? So those kinds of men exist. We're not denying that they are wrong and they should be stopped. They should stop their oppression. They should stop their mistreatment of their wives or their daughters. So those, we're not denying any of that. But is feminism really the answer for this? Is feminism really the answer? And the answer is no, because feminism presents itself as the solution.
Solution, exactly.
But in fact, creates more problems.
Yeah.
So it's like the cure is worse than the disease in many ways, because you have people who they have been abused or they've been mistreated, and then they start becoming feminists.
Yeah.
They start adopting these feminist ideas, and then they leave Islam. Or they end up thinking that Islam is unjust, or they want to reform Islam. So they go down this path because they thought that feminism was a solution for their pain, a solution for the injustice that they suffered. But it's not a solution. It's it's a cure that's worse than the disease. So sisters have to be very careful. Sisters have to be very careful. Don't fall into this trap of the shaitan, thinking that, okay, you have legitimate grievances, you have legitimate problems, but that doesn't mean go and adopt something that is going to be worse for you. Seek the solution in Islam.
Yeah.
Seek the solution in Islam.
Absolutely.
That is going to be that will give you a real solution that will benefit you in the dunya and the akhirah.
Absolutely. Couldn't put it very well. The answer is always in our religion. That's the thing. Allah has made our religion complete. There's nothing that we need to look for from an outside source to complete it, because Allah has put everything into our religion. And that's one of the beauties of Islam, and that's why a lot of other religions are incomplete, and you'll see people not even agreeing with certain things in their religion and disagreeing with others because some things actually contradict. But when we're given the way of life, from when we're born to when we're dying, even after that, then there's actually no. And that's a good tip for those who feel like they do have feminist views, to actually just go back to your religion, just study it more and actually learn. Once you do, then you can make a better informed decision onto what you actually want to do, inshallah. So I did open the questions for some of the people, so I'm just kind of scrolling through some of the questions people have asked. Okay. Someone just asked, what are the roles of women and men in Islam? That in itself is a topic on its own, and inshallah, if that is something people are interested in, and I feel like it's something that should be mentioned, we will definitely review that and include that in our future live sessions, inshallah.
So there's one question here that I'm seeing. It's saying that, you know, there's an assumption that we identify as feminists. White capitalist feminists don't represent us, but black Muslim women's movements, for us to have our rights given by Allah upheld, we need to support. So there's this common notion that, oh, these things that I'm saying now is applying to white feminism, and we reject white feminism. We need to support black feminism or decolonized feminism or some other kind of women's movement. But when we look at many of these women's movements that are not white, or they're decolonized or their black women's movements, they adopt many of the same ideas. Many of the core assumptions of white feminism is included in their black feminist movement.
Yeah.
So how is it really different? How is it really different? I'll give you an example with abortion.
Yeah.
Okay, abortion. And abortion in the US, the biggest abortion organization is called Planned Parenthood. Yeah. Basically, they're the ones who have really pushed this idea of abortion. But who is the founder of Planned Parenthood, who is pushing abortion? Her name is Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger. She lived 100 years ago, and she was white, and she is racist and anti-black, and she promoted abortion and created this organization of Planned Parenthood as anti-black eugenics. If you know what eugenics means, it's this idea that we are going to improve the human race by making sure that those who are inferior do not reproduce. The inferior people shouldn't have children, shouldn't have babies. Only the superior people should reproduce so that more superior people are in society. So the racists, white supremacists, they didn't want black people to have children. They were trying to get black women to abort whenever they got pregnant. So Margaret Sanger was one of these. She was a eugenicist, and she has many statements on record that she's saying that we have to subjugate the black race. We cannot let blacks, the inferior race, reproduce. And she created an organization, Planned Parenthood, for this purpose. And she created abortion clinics. Where are these abortion clinics? When you look at the map of different cities, the abortion clinics are always in the black neighborhoods. The abortion clinics are always in the minority neighborhoods. Because abortion was a weapon to be used against non-whites.
Absolutely.
Now you have black feminists, the black women's movement. And what are they promoting? What are they preaching? They're preaching the same ideology of abortion. They're preaching the same ideology of reproductive rights.
Exactly.
So they don't call it white feminism, but you've taken the same weapon, the same poison, and you just wrapped it in a different packaging, but it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. So this is why all of these feminist movements, it doesn't matter if it's white, black, whatever, they all have the same underlying ideologies. And they're all contrary to Islam, so we have to be extremely, extremely careful not to be tricked by these games. These are all tricks.
All right. Jazakallah khair for that. There's another one saying, Allah has perfected Islam for us, and we can find solace in that. But don't you think feminism is a tool and struggle to overcome traditional patriarchy and cultural norms?
Yeah, that's a bad thing. Feminism is trying to destroy patriarchy. So what does patriarchy mean?
To begin with, exactly.
And what does it mean? So patriarchy can mean two things. In the feminist mind, patriarchy is an evil system of structural oppression. Evil system that is designed to control women. That's what patriarchy, according to feminism, means. But patriarchy, the idea of patriarchy, is found in Islam. What is the basis of this? It's in the Quran when Allah says, "Al-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa." That is what patriarchy means, because it's men are in control, authorities over, and protectors of women. So men are responsible for women. And when we look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he says is, for example, kullukum ra'in. Every one of you is a shepherd. Every one of you is a shepherd. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that The father is the shepherd of his family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the shepherd of his family. So this gives him a certain position. This is found in Islam. It's also found in human nature. It's also found in human nature because Allah has created us with this instinct that we want. So ask the sisters. Okay, we can ask the sisters and say that, look, would you prefer to have a husband who is some wimp, who's weak? Do you want a husband who is tiny, shorter than you? Do you want a husband who can't stand up for himself? Or do you want a husband who is big and strong and is going to take charge and is going to protect you and is going to defend you and is going to do this and this and this? And even the sisters themselves, even the feminist sisters will say, no, I want the big, strong man. I want, as my husband, I want my husband to be big and strong. So this is even, this patriarchy is even in their own instincts. It's in everyone's instincts. This is how Allah created us. So that definition of patriarchy is true. It is a part of Islam. This other idea that men are just trying to control women for the sake of their own benefit with a structural system, this is just in their imagination. It's nonsense. It doesn't actually exist anywhere.
Another question by a brother. He said, is there rights that feminism has guaranteed women that they need in which Islam didn't already uphold? And do we need feminism no matter what type?
No, we don't need feminism. We have to reject feminism in the strongest terms. And there's nothing that, how can there be anything in feminism that is good, that is correct, that is not in Islam? As you mentioned, Islam is complete. Islam is complete. Allah has chosen Islam for all humanity. And there is nothing that feminism has that is good that is not in Islam. Everything that contradicts Islam in feminism is because it's from the evil of feminism, from the injustice of feminism, from the ignorance of feminism, from the corruption of feminism.
So absolutely. Another question here says, it's not really a question but a statement where a sister said, what about we discuss the reasons why Muslim women even identify themselves as feminists to begin with? Like, could it be because culturally they, because in some cultures there is some sort of, I wouldn't say like a misrepresentation of women's rights, or even just improper treatment of women's rights. Probably is a cultural thing. And a lot of that gets mistaken for the fact that Islam has those beliefs of women. A lot of that gets, I think, intertwined. So she's asking, do we not talk about the reason why they identify themselves as feminists to begin with, as opposed to why you're a feminist?
The reason why is because of colonialism. That's the reason why. You had the colonizer coming to the Muslim societies, and they wanted to dominate this Muslim societies, and they recognized that the way to dominate Muslim societies is to control the women and make women think that we, the colonizers, are their friends. We, the colonizers, are their savior. We are going to save them from the oppressive Muslim man. This is the message. This is their trick, their propaganda. If we can get the Muslim women to turn against the Muslim men, divide and conquer, turn them against each other, they will destroy themselves, and then we can come and be in control, and we can take advantage of them. This was the whole plot. This was the whole plan. And that's why you have Muslims who have adopted feminism. This is the main reason why. And now, as I mentioned, it's the status quo. It's popular. If you're a feminist, you're woke. You understand things. You know about structural oppression. You know about this decolonial narrative. Blah 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 blah. So it's become popular. It's become the status quo, and that's why you have Muslims today, young Muslims who are adopting this ideology on the sheer force of popular pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And just lastly, one of the sisters said, why don't we put the same effort you're using to reject feminism and put it into helping eradicate the injustice women face daily? Would that be more beneficial?
Well, the feminism is causing so much oppression.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason. We're trying to get rid of feminism because it's oppressive, because it's confusing, because it's leading sisters into misguidance. It's leading our sisters and our brothers. It's leading brothers and sisters to misguidance. It's leading them, and sometimes even to kufr.
Yeah.
An example: you have feminists, Muslim, whether sometimes male, sometimes female, that they say, why in the Quran is the word he used? He, huwa, when referring to Allah. Why?
Yeah.
Because we know Allah has no gender.
Yeah.
Allah is not a man or a woman.
Yeah.
Subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's but what Allah says in the Quran is huwa, huwa, huwa.
Yeah.
Huwa Allah. So this is, the feminist has a problem with this because it's not equality. Okay, so you have some sisters, they're rejecting the Quran on this basis, and then you had one famous feminist woman politician who is saying that my Allah is a she. Allah is a she.
Yeah, not a he.
Not a he. So they're promoting this. So this is kufr. Like you're contradicting the Quran. You're saying that you know better than Allah. You know better than the words of the Quran. So these are the kinds of dangers of feminism.
Yeah.
As for oppression of women, mistreatment, that's always a part of being Muslim. We fight oppression wherever it is.
Yeah.
As the Prophet ﷺ says, that stop oppression, stop the oppressor, the zalim.
Yeah.
Help the zalim, help the oppressor and the oppressed. You help the oppressed by stopping the oppressor, and the oppressor is also helped by stopping his oppression. Absolutely. So this is a part of Islam, but feminism is causing oppression itself.
Okay, absolutely. As we can see, the questions won't stop, which isn't a bad thing. It just means we definitely needed more time to tackle a lot of the people's questions, because they might have different points of views on this topic, and as you know, it is a very large topic which branches out into a lot of different sections. But inshallah, with that, only
one more thing.
Yeah.
Like what I had actually wanted to talk about in this session, there are so many stories because one of the things that really drives the feminist narrative are stories. Okay, we've heard about the poor sister who was abused by her father, or who was abused by her husband. We know these stories because they are spread, and this is just natural. But we don't hear about the stories where it is the mother who has abused her son, the wife who has abused her husband. There are also many stories like this, but men don't share these stories because they might be embarrassed or they don't want to talk about it. But imams and any kind of community leader knows about these stories. There are many, that I know personally, people that they have been abused. It's a man, he's been abused. Sometimes it can even be physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse.
Is there? Yeah, absolutely.
And even some, there in the US, there was a case. There was a case where a Muslim woman, she killed her 2 sons. Absolutely. This was a Muslim woman in hijab, a Muslim woman who was active in the community, but she killed her 2 sons. She just killed them with a gun. And subhanAllah, like this is something that can happen. And her husband was just like he was outside the house at the time. He was at work, and then he comes home and his two sons are killed. Why? But these kinds of stories aren't really shared, and they are not reflected upon. That no, in Islam we know that Allah doesn't make one sex evil. He doesn't make men evil or oppressive. Women can also be oppressive. Women can also be abusive. Look at Surah Yusuf. Look at Surah Yusuf. Look at, right?
Wife.
Exactly, the king's wife. And what she was doing to Yusuf alayhi salam, the lies that she was spreading. This is not a clear example of abuse. So we have to get out of this narrative that, oh, all of the abuse, all of the oppression is from men against women. No, this is not the case.
Absolutely, inshallah.